So I've created these shapes here, and let's say that I don't want them to move. I want to keep them like this, and so maybe I click on that and it actually moves, and let's say I don't want that. Well, another tool that I have is, and this is kind of where you can really start to get into what a powerful tool, or at least some of the abilities of Tinkercad, is that I can select some objects and I can choose to group them together and they become one shape. Okay, and so now these objects, whenever I select one, I select both. They're always selected together. I can't select them separately. If I resize one, it resizes the other. Okay, if I shrink them one way, it's going to shrink both of them that same way, and they're going to change proportionally. Okay, and so that's called grouping. Alright, so if you have two objects selected, and you could click this group button right here. You can also ungroup by clicking right here to deselect them. So if you had an array of boxes like this, you might want to select all of them and click here to group them. Okay, and now you have a group of objects. So let me show you another way this might be useful. So if you're making some kind of complex object and you want it to basically, instead of being a series of separate objects, if you want it to be one single object, I can select all three of these and click the group button. You'll notice their color changes and now they work as one object. Okay, if you want, when you group them, you can choose as a color, you can choose multicolor, so they still retain their original colors. I think it's kind of helpful when they switch colors when you group them. So, I mean, that's totally a preference thing, but I can individually also alter the color of things if I want. And grouping shapes is a great way to hold things together, to turn them into a new composite shape that's made up of other parts. Okay, something I didn't mention before, if you want to lift something off the work plane, you can click this little arrow right here to raise it up. Okay, you can also, with your ruler, type in here, if I want it 15 millimeters off the table, I can type that in 15 and it's going to raise it up. Something else, there's a snapping grid here, and so what happens is every time if you press the arrows, it shifts things over by 1 millimeter. If you drag this around, it moves things by 1 millimeter. If you are planning to do things by hand that way, you can actually adjust the snapping grid for less precision, or bigger chunks basically, or more precision with smaller chunks. Okay, all the way to 1/10 of a millimeter. So now it's moving by like 1/10 of a millimeter. Okay, that can get kind of tricky because it's such high precision. If you're trying to just get things lined up and stuff, it can be nice to use the 1 millimeter snapping, but if you want the more precision, you go to here. And as I was saying, I always recommend using the ruler to change the dimensions as opposed to doing it by hand. Okay, so this video was on grouping, and it's kind of the basics of how you group things together.